Tuning guitars, possibly one of the most tedious and annoying things about playing guitar, and it's probably one of the first things that you learned when you picked up a guitar for the first time, which is why it is so surprising to see the amount of people that are doing it wrong. I can almost guarantee that by the time you watch the entirety of this video, you might have realized that you've been tuning your guitars wrong this entire time. I've recorded the same riff on this guitar twice. Have a listen to both and tell me which one you think sounds more in tune. Riff A was the one that was more in tune. Before I recorded both of those riffs, everything was practically the same in both examples. The strings were the same, the pick was the same, the guitar was the same. Obviously it's the same riff, and I made sure that when I was using the tuner, the light would hit green before I went on to the next string. Clearly, tuning a guitar isn't as straightforward as hitting an open string and then turning the tuning peg until the light hits green. Like all other string instruments, guitars are very, very, very temperamental. Anything from what you're actually playing to how hard you're picking and even how hard you're fretting can all have a big impact on how in tune your guitar sounds. One simple way to instantly improve how in tune your guitar sounds is to tune the guitar based on how you plan on physically playing it. When you first learn how to tune a guitar, again, it's mainly just a thing of you hit the open string, you turn the tuning peg, and you wait for the light to go green, and that's cool, and then you move to the next string. This is an example of tuning to the decay of a note, which in this case is flawed. If you're tuning up your guitar to the decay of each note and then playing a really heavy-handed, fast riff, where the notes don't have that much time to decay in the first place, the tuning of your guitar will sound sharp immediately, just like RIFF B. This is because when you pick a string, it will naturally raise the pitch a couple cents because it's getting the initial pick attack, and then the note will decay and go back down. Instead, if you were to consistently pick the string and tune the guitar to the attack of the note rather than the decay, especially for a song like this one, you end up sounding way more in tune, just like RIFF A. This works in the opposite way as well, because in the opposite way, if you were consistently picking the string and tuning to the attack of the note, but then what you need to play is a really long, drawn out note or a big chord or something like that, it'll sound in tune the moment you hit it, and then as the note sustains, it will eventually fall flat. So in a nutshell, to get the best results, you need to tune your guitar to the way that you plan on physically playing the instrument, accounting for things like picking hard, picking soft, playing fast, playing slow, or even how hard you'll be fretting some of the strings in big chords and stuff like that, because all of those things can drastically change how in tune the guitar sounds. This is a great overall way to tune your guitars, but when you combine it with the second method, which we're about to go into, it becomes really in tune. This second tuning method is a little bit more advanced and hasn't been something that I've seen anyone explicitly talk about online or like, a dedicated YouTube video about it like this one, but it's something that's definitely a staple in that producer/engineer space, especially for recording guitars. This method only really applies to recording guitars as it's kind of impossible to do it while you're playing, but word of warning, this might ruin guitar for you. In my experience, learning this method and doing it this way can also be a little bit of a curse, because once you learn this method and start tuning your guitars for recordings in this way, your ears will become extremely sensitive to every little discrepancy in a guitar's tuning. It's actually a really good way to train your ears for note pitch as well. Modern recordings in this day and age call for extreme levels of precision and stability, to the point where this tuning method goes simply beyond tuning to the open notes and instead extends to actually tuning your chords to themselves when you record them. The long story short is that, again, guitars are not perfect instruments. They're very temperamental. Straight frets on a guitar are only an approximation of perfect intonation according to the Western scale, where there's only 12 notes in a scale, which in Ooga Booga terms means that if you play a certain chord or a certain section of the fretboard, all those individual notes in that chord or in that section of the fretboard won't be 100% mathematically in tune. They might be anywhere between like 90 to 95% in tune. Each of them might be just like a couple cents off a note or something like that, which to most ears, especially with a lot of musicians, it's something that's absolutely fine and has been fine for generations before this one. But across 3, 4, 5, even 6 notes in a chord, if you're fancy, all those differences can add up, and even though you're a couple cents off on each note, it puts your guitar slightly out of tune, and it can be a little bit annoying if you have the ear to recognize it in the first place. Here's two examples again. One of them is just tuning the way that we always tune guitars to open notes, and the other one is tuned within the chord itself. Let me know if you can tell which one is which. As technology advances and as we get more inclined as musicians, our ears develop exponentially. And I, for one, can hear the difference in those two examples straight away. And if you're wondering, RIFF A was, again, the one that was more in tune. There's a couple different ways to do this tuning method, but the way that I do it is that I start with my highest note in that passage or in that chord first, and I tune all the other notes in relation to that note. So start on the highest note, make sure that it's in tune according to the tuner, make sure it's lining up to a note, and make sure that it is absolutely perfect. You're 0 cents away from being on the note. From there, I then use my ears to go through all of the notes against that first initial high note, and then listen out for the intervallic transparency between each of those notes against each other. Please stick with me. Even if both of the strings are in tune according to the tuner, if the notes are slightly out of tune with each other, you can hear this wavering sound as the two notes clash against each other, which would then tell you that those notes are out of tune with each other and you might need to slightly adjust one of them. Or you can simply just go through every single note in the chord and tune them perfectly according to the tuner. Let me know if you've already been using these techniques when you're tuning your guitars, and if you think a friend would benefit from seeing this video, definitely send it to them. And if you stuck around to this point of the video, here's a 10% code for everything on my web store, including merch. That's only going to be valid until the next video gets posted on the channel, so see you then.